Quick, owner of Florida Women's Law Group, and pleased to have as our guest again, Josh Shilts, owner of Villela Shilts. Is that right? Or
Villela and Shilts.
Villela. It requires that little bit of accent, but
yes.
And our local national expert on business valuation, taxes, and really anything that you need to know about your business or life financially. We always go to Josh. So happy to have you here today.
Happy to be back. Always love being here.
One of the things Josh and I were talking about earlier that I think is a lot of interest is alimony. And here now the law is in effect, the new tax law.
Yeah.
What does that mean for those getting divorced?
So I've seen profounding impacts of it. And I started to see it in late 2018 because everyone was scrambling to try and get their divorce done. The fact of the matter is alimony was very advantageous for the payer. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times where you had the husband or whoever was the majority income earner saying, okay, I got to pay alimony, well, at least I get a tax deduction for that.
Right.
But with the new law in effect, that tax deduction is gone. So what does it mean? It really has two impacts. Number one, it creates more of a tax burden on the entire marital estate. Okay?
Right, because now the taxes will be higher coming out of the money versus if they'd been shifted
correct
to the wife who would have less.
And you're not married filing jointly, or if there's children, sometimes the dependency exemption's gone and you're flip-flopping. Right. So it's not as advantageous. So now, instead of sitting here and trying to work on support, a lot of the cases I get involved in are high net worth. Alimony is one component. Equitable distribution is also a major component. What I never liked about alimony, and I know you and I have talked in great depths about this, is alimony was sometimes we would see it as we'd walk out of a settlement and we go, we know we're going to get alimony for 2-3 years, and then we're going to get sandbagged. And this person's going to come back and they're going to cry that they, overspilled milk. Oh, I don't make that much anymore. And so what happens? Well, you got to get back into the fight of it. Right. And I think we are both keenly aware of how a divorce is such a major life event. And going through it once is enough. To have to go back into it 3 or 5 years from that. And the other thing that you and I have talked about, and I know I've talked to a lot of people in your office, is the control factor.
Right.
And it's just a common fact that men, when they're the major income earner, will utilize money as a controlling aspect because they don't have control over you physically or emotionally anymore. But that's that one last thread that they can hold on to. When I look at alimony as we sit here today in 2019, we have to be smarter about it when we're helping our clients. And one thing that we talked about is instead of looking at, well, I want alimony to support me and handle my living expenses, we have to step back and we have to say, what do your assets look like? Is there going to be enough that we can, whether you have liquid assets that are going to produce interest or dividends, or maybe it's some sort of property that's producing rental income, is there a way when we're doing our equitable distribution that we can avoid alimony altogether, cut control completely to it, and takes what we call a lump sum alimony? And it's unequal distribution of the entire marital balance sheet, if you will.
And the thing is, I agree with you on so many of those fronts because yes, it keeps people tied together. And one of the things I think that causes women a lot of concern is, well, what if he stops paying? What if he doesn't want to pay anymore? And to be that financially dependent on your ex-spouse, who you guys, presumably don't get along anymore, it can be difficult. There are a lot of stand-up guys out there that pay their alimony and it goes through, but there are so many that we see trying to reduce it. And so here you fought so hard for this alimony award, which can be substantial. It can be, $80,000 a year. It can be a lot. But if that goes away, that's the problem. Like if something happens and he just stops paying and you've got to go fight for it, it puts you just still, again, with, like you said, in his control and just a scary
and it's
position.
emotional. right?
Totally,
So anyone
yeah.
who's gone through a divorce, which I consider one of the major life events, you're vulnerable, and you have to go
Yeah.
through that again, right?
Exactly.
And if you talk to anyone who's been through a divorce, when they get over it, it's like this weight is off their shoulders and they have this clear path. But when I talk to my clients who have been through it and we've done the lump sum route, they're much happier because there's no control. There's decisions that they can make, and they're not worried about the budget that they're put on. And this is where we sit down, and as an accountant, it's me looking at a balance sheet. And when I look at that balance sheet, I'm looking at the assets, and I'm not just trying to understand what dollar amount to put next to the checking account or the investment account. I want to see how those assets are performing, right? And it bleeds, that has to do a lot with my valuation background. But we all know that just keeping your cash in a checking account, you're not going to get much return on it. However, maybe you get into a rental situation and start producing rental income. Maybe you take that leap of faith and open up that business that you wanted to start doing it. And you have that extra money, and you don't have the potential pitfall in 3, 5, 7 years where you're going through, and this is what it's called, a modification. Alimony modification is a very real thing. Heather and her team deal with it daily, I'm sure. And we get brought into it, and again, so now you're living on this strict budget, and guess what? Nothing in that budget helped you prepare for a litigation. So now you got to dip into your savings account and your assets and use that to fight for something all over again, of which you already thought you did.
Yeah, and I mean, so that's a big concern, and also it made me think about what are we going to see? Because of course, yes, that was for agreements that now moving forward, but still, once we modify something now, so if you are currently receiving alimony,
Good point.
now it may not behoove your ex-husband because now he's getting the deduction. So that would be the downfall with that, some kind of modification. So that may help keep them from going to reduce it. But when you basically reopen the entire thing, and at the end of the day, we have to apply the new laws. And I can't see how those new taxes aren't going to affect.
Speaking with individuals who are the payers of alimony, okay, now that they don't get the tax deduction, it's not as beneficial, right? It's basically just write the check and I don't even get to deduct it. So when you sit down with a client on both sides of the table and you explain that to them and you start doing present value calculations and really start working on the deal, both sides are open to that because the payor is going, I'm giving away tax-free money on this. This is not making sense to me. It's better for me to give away the house, give the extra house away, give the IRA away, give the 401k away. That way I can keep my money and I can defer it and I can invest it again and I'll start anew. So from a basic financial plan, I think alimony in high net worth cases needs to be studied along with the assets to understand what's really the best for that individual and for the total marital estate. Because just because one party is saying, oh, well, I'm giving it, remember, that's, as we know, it's both people's estate, okay? So understand the tax impact to the entire marital estate and what is going to be best for ultimately you and everyone involved in this together.
I agree, because at the end of the day, there's only so much money and it's got to be divided, spread out, and you need to put yourself in the best financial position. But even though, I'm always advocating for the woman to get as much money as possible, the more money he has, the more he has to give. So it's like really looking at it and not to the IRS. So if you are facing that issue, you're concerned, or you're going through a divorce and you're just like, what's going to happen? We have a lot of assets, but I want alimony. Please give us a call. We can go through your options. We bring Josh in all the time on those types of cases, and we'll make sure we get you exactly where you really want to be and need to be. Thank you again, Heather Quick.